every pal, welcome to another episode of the Pull Box Pals, and as always, I have my best pal Monk here with me.
Oh, your best
Yeah,
pal
my best pal,
out of every
and
pal.
out of every pal. And we also have a special pal with us today. We got Kyle from the Pull Box Lair with us. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm doing well. I feel so good after that music, though. I kind of just feel like I'm totally zened out and
It's
ready to just sip on my coffee and hang and watch you guys talk after that little music, man.
like honestly, it's like for me and doing the podcast, having that intro to me is just like a batter walking up to the plate. And it's just like, you got to swing away.
Yeah,
Just go for it.
That's
I
fantastic.
did want to just clarify that the show is the Comic Book Lair. The Pull Box Lair is what I
Oh,
lovingly refer to us as a group.
I didn't catch up. So happy that you
But my
got
show
that.
is the Comic Book Lair that I do with my good buddy Ray.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Kyle. Yeah. Yeah, I also in my head just refer to the four of us as the Pull Box Lair.
Yeah,
And then
because
our group chat is called Pull Box Lair.
and I was about to make a reference to the Pull Box Lair, which will probably be in the title of this episode. So just know, friends, pals of ours who watch that's the colloquialism between all of us.
Yeah. But yeah, and also this show is just so full of little mishaps like that.
Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you know all about that.
I still give you guys tons of credit for going live. I'm nervous just to be here. Like, oh man, like be careful with the nose. Like, don't get fingers too close to it. Don't want the wrong impression.
That's funny. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. So you're probably, if you're watching this, you're probably realizing that we're not live right now. We are recording this a couple weeks in advance. So if we're not talking about comics that are coming out this week like we normally do, that's just because they don't exist yet in our world, but they will, and I'm sure that we'll enjoy them. They're coming soon to a comic book shop near you. But yeah, we just kind of wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk with our good pal Kyle and get to know him a little bit better and just dive into some good old comic chats.
Everything for the love of comics.
That's what I'm saying.
So let's get into it. I'm going to ask the first question for you.
Go ahead.
I'm nervous.
Me too.
No, it's so. This is kind of a two. There's two questions to just answer it. However you feel, but it's like, what are comics to you, and like, what is your history with comics? Like, how did you get to this love of comics?
When you're a kid, there's something about comic books, and even today, like when I knew we were going to kind of be chatting about this, it sounds like a silly answer, but it's still true. Comics are cool. Like it just doesn't really matter. They're just freaking cool. But I'm a story guy. I love stories, and I think the coolest thing about comics for me is just the world building. We were talking earlier behind stage, Matt, about using voices when you're reading a story to kids or something. And for me, what's cool about comics is the pictures with the world, with the text. Like when I'm done reading it, like it's a whole reality to me that's different. And I think that's what I love about it most, is just that it's the creativity behind it and the world building. And how I got into it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, just off of that, because we were also talking backstage about reading novels. And when I read like any sort of novel or anything, I don't do anything besides like real life. Like I don't like try to imagine like a dream master world or like an 8 billion genies, or like even like allowing myself to like just use art instead of like reality, to like paint this. And then it's just looking like people I know and like stuff like that. But like, again, like you're saying with comics, it has that freedom to be like, just a lot of freedom. I mean, obviously I don't want to be like, you can do anything, because there obviously are like limitations, but your like ability is very, you have a wide range of what you can do.
Yeah. And I think one of the funny, like, test cases for that is like, Sweet Tooth or Paper Girls. Like they were this whole world to me, and then to watch their show, it kind of feels like this weird sort of like, what is happening? But having read all the Harry Potters and watched the movies, you're just like, oh, so that's what Harry Potter looks like.
Yeah. Right.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, that is such a huge difference too. When you see comic books go to movies and you see a novel go to a movie, is like you already have characters in your head that you've been seeing in the panels and like seeing that drawn emotion on their face, and then they have
Hmm.
to pick somebody who looks the part
Yeah.
and like can show that part, but like
Right.
it's never like spot on.
And that's something that they don't ever try to do with like comic book movie adaptations is try to incorporate the art from those things.
Mhm.
It's maybe like they try to get the vibe or the tone or
Yeah.
like you were saying, like just like making like the characters look like how they're supposed to. But and again, like how do you even do that? You know, besides like just give them the clothes that they look. That's a really hard thing to like to translate that. I wouldn't even know how you would do that outside of like transitions or something, but you know, I'm not a director, so well, what do I know?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so Kyle, back to you. What cut you off like right before your
No,
history?
yeah.
Um, what,
Well, I mean, like just like any little boy. I mean, I liked Marvel characters and DC characters. I didn't really read comics though until I was much older.
hmm,
Probably like right after I actually graduated high school is when I first. There was a comic book shop right next to where I lived when I first moved out to California, and like at the time, I was literally only in there because again, I thought comic books were cool, and I was like, dude, I'm bored. I didn't really have a lot of friends just moving out to California. I was like, I'm gonna read some comic books, and I was
Mhm.
reading stuff like Battle of the Planets and just random like comics that I'd pick up,
hmm
and then it just kind of stayed really low key. And then I'd say really around the time of when the first Deadpool movie came out, I like went all in, and I've got all the Deadpool omnibuses now, and so kind of like diving back into
That's
it
awesome.
started there. And then like I was going to a shop when I moved with my wife to a new city called Big Red's Comics, and I remember being there, and I was just reading Marvel at the time, and I was talking to the guy, and I was like, dude, what should I read next? I'm getting kind of bored with this. And he just looks me in the face. He's like, I don't really read the Marvel and DC stuff. I read indie stuff. And at the time, I'm like, indie stuff? Like, I don't know if I could read that. That seems too weird. But he gave me from Boom, he gave me, oh man, it was a horror book with red in the title, and I can't remember it now.
from
And some,
Boom.
yeah.
I'll give it a Google.
And he gave me Something is Killing the Children.
Was it Red
And
Hood?
Oh, nice.
No, I guess that wouldn't be it. Red Ranger? No,
no,
Red Mother.
yes, Red Mother.
There we go.
And and I just remember reading those, and I was like, dude, comics can do what now? And then
Yeah.
that just really like dove me deep into the world of indie comics, and like literally I haven't looked back. I mean, I started a show because I love them so much.
Yeah.
I'm on the verge of a divorce because there's no room in my house for anything but comics. I'm joking. My wife loves me, and she's okay with it, even if she's not.
Yeah.
But that's really how it started. I mean, like I haven't been into them as long as a lot of people, so you know, people like even you guys know a lot more of the Marvel history than I do. But I just love it, and I love the stories, and I love chatting with it. And that's the other really cool thing about comic books is just like just by design almost, or by what they are, they create a community around them, and I love
Yeah.
that about it.
No, they
Yep.
they create conversations,
Yeah.
and it's just so much too, just in the aspect of like they're not long. I mean, it takes what 15 minutes to sit down and read an issue,
Yeah.
and you just experience so much like storytelling in 28, 32 pages, and you just have a lot to talk about. And so like it's really cool that we do have these platforms. You have Comic Book Lair, and we got our show here, and but the
Look
whole
at that.
point
You
of
got it
it,
right that time.
I did, yeah. But just like every week, you and Ray get to sit down and chat about comics. Me and Monk sit down and chat about comics, and then you include all the, like I was kind of mentioning to Monk backstage, I think maybe before you're on, but it's just like the conversations I have through Instagram messaging throughout the week with you guys, with Ross, with Ray, a couple other just people in the community. It's so much fun. Like I
Yeah.
just
Mhm.
love the conversations. So
Yeah, even if it's not like in depth, it's nice to just even have somebody pop in. Like if you post about whatever, just have like somebody be like, "Ah," like just to like just kind of like game recognizing game, even though like we
Mhm.
had nothing to do with it. It's just like, "Oh, I see that you're liking that comic. I also like that comic." Like it's nice to just have that acknowledgement of like and that's
mhm.
just like a human feeling, I think, is just like this. We love when like the things that we loved are acknowledged. as like,
Yeah.
I see why you love this thing, and like just getting to dive into these conversations and just be like, why did you love it? Because I love it. Do we love it for the same reason? Are you gonna
Right.
show me something that I didn't realize before? Like, and again,
Yeah.
like that's why I love listening to the Comic Book Lairs, because you guys do talk about a lot of the same comics that we listen to, and I'm like, oh, it's cool to have your perspective on it, but then I try not to bring it back to my own show
That's
And
because
hilarious.
your
I love
episodes come out before us.
Book of the Week, just because like I've read so much from the stuff you guys have reviewed on Book of the Week, just because of the way you talked about it. And I was like, no, I want to read that. Like I read I read Friday, I think, because of
Oh,
you
Friday's
guys.
so good.
I Crossover, I believe. There's a few others, but yeah, like,
For me, it's kind of been like a cheat sheet. Like it's just been like I'm just gonna listen to these guys talk about it, because it's like, and then like it is like, because I'm not gonna remember everything, or like I also am of like the school of thought of like, sometimes when you know stuff going into a comic or any sort of narrative, you're gonna enjoy it more
100%.
because you don't have to like sit there and be like, what's gonna happen to Luke Skywalker? I hope that guy's not related to him. Um, um, but yeah, I wanted to go back to something that you were, talking about going into a comic shop for the first time, and like walking in and just being like, what do I do?
Mhm.
And it
Or-
is a little overwhelming, but it is like very exciting because you just see
Yes.
like all these things you don't know, and it's very like rich, it seems like the right word for it. Like there's just like this plethora of like stories, and like even just like looking behind me of just like, look at all those different images and art styles and colors, like there's so many different ways to attract you. And
Mhm.
like it's just like it's I mean, there's no other feeling than like kid in a candy shop, right?
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
Well, I remember the one I first went to when I moved to California was, I loved it because I'm a massive introvert, believe it or not. That's why I actually like these, because these conversations are easier for me, like over Zoom, than in person. I get kind of sheepish. But this one was cool because it was like a huge hobby shop, right? Like a hobby store. So they had like RC cars, a bunch of like stuff like model airplanes, stuff like that. And in the back corner, there was like almost like the size of your room, Monk. Like it was tiny,
Mm.
but just this little comic shop. And I happened upon it one day, and I was like, "Yeah, let's do this." But it's so funny that you mentioned this because I didn't know anything at the time. But like what drew my attention was, I don't know anything about Battle of the Planets, but there was this rad foil cover, and at the time I wasn't too aware of anything about foil covers. I was like, dude, I don't know what this is, but it's gonna be worth money someday. I gotta get it. And so I remember I got that day one, and then the other one I started collecting from that time that they had on the shelf was the Wolverine Origins, the ones where he had like bones coming out instead of the
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
claws.
yeah.
Oh wow.
So it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's like literally, I was like, oh, he's got bones coming out. This is new. And then let's get a foil cover. Let's make this happen.
What are those?
I remember when I first started, because when I first got into comics, again, that was like overseas, and so access to them was kind of hard, but somehow I would find a bunch of digital copies on my computer. Who know how they got there? um but so when I got, that was kind of my experience of reading comics, was like just getting them every week digitally when they came out. And then it wasn't until like around the 2020 pandemic that I was like, I'm gonna start going to my comic shop, because I wanted to like support a local shop during that time.
Yeah.
And they actually were doing great because a lot of people were home, a lot of people had money, so they're like, I'm gonna go to the board game shop and the comic shop. But yeah, just walking in there and just being like, looking at the indie comics for the first time, really, and just being like, I think I can do this now. I think I can like step into these and like, just find a issue number one that looks cool, and just, or
Mhm.
like I might have even just like bought like issue 1 and 2 of a comic that was already out, because that's a classic thing that I do. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun getting into like learning the ropes of comics, which sounds really silly.
Yeah. But no, there are the ins and outs of like what you need to know, like when you need to put in like an order if you want to order something. Like
Yeah.
what like because like one of the things I do is like I try and submit my like list to my shop 2 months before release, and then when release comes up, I start watching like, you know, what are Kyle and Ray talking about that's coming out? What is Spark Comics? I love listening, like watching him and like what he like puts out as like a good list of like, you should try and get these if they're at your shop this week. And I like watch those things and like, okay, maybe I need to hop on these, but I missed out on a lot. Like I missed out on Monmouth. I missed out on Mosley, 2 M's. But you know, I'll watch for those trades or like I can get them digitally. But yeah, like it's just like it's fun for me to like go into the shop knowing like there's some stuff I still want to get, but I don't know if it's going to be there. And it still gives me that kid in a candy store feeling that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So
I do think that the and I don't want to go down this rabbit trail for too long, but because he brought it up, and it does kind of get under my skin. I really think that the modern day kind of, I guess it's always been this way, but I do think that the business model for single issues is completely broken. There something needs to be rethought. Like I like getting single issues. Like I only do it digitally now, just because there's, especially doing a podcast, like, and you want to talk about the new releases, missed shipments. These comic book shops can't not possibly order all of these issues in a hope to sell them. That's all overhead that they don't know if they're going to sell it. The returns are terrible. Anyway, we don't need to go down here, but it does just bother me, and I wish that someone could figure it out for him, because I just think about Frank all the time. You know, he's a good buddy of mine, and he's got a shop, and I'm like, he just can't. How he would love to, but there's no way you can order this many. And then when, you know, you've got people placing pre-orders, but Diamond's shipment's 3 days late, and I don't know, man, it's wild to me.
yeah. No,
it's definitely difficult. I mean, like, that's why my comic shop can do those like crazy, ridiculous deals that it does, is because their backlog builds up so much. Now, thankfully, they're also, like I mentioned, like a board game shop, and I would imagine that, like, you know, Magic and all those kind of things like that subsidates most of it, and so they can be a little bit more like liberal with the like choices that they make with the comics. But also, like, I think my comic shop is very evident with them, is you have to know your customers. Like, all the comics, I get a lot of like medieval like comics that are kind of more aimed towards like the board game genre, because that's a lot of the customers that come in there, you know. So I don't see a lot of like more, maybe, you know, something that would be outside of that, because that's, you know, again, the person who runs my shop has to understand that, like, in order to keep this thing going, like, we have to do, you know, meet the demands of our customers rather than just get whatever is, you know, looks good, you know.
Yeah. No, yeah, probably the majority of comic shops in the States, like, yeah, they're not pulling in everything every week because they don't have their shop in a place where like everybody is going to the comic shop.
Right.
Like, you know, my shop, sorry, we can end this rabbit hole after I say this.
No.
But like, yeah, my shop told me a couple weeks ago, it's like, yeah, if you didn't order it, like the chances of it being here, like very, very low now. Because
which is sad, because it's probably a rad story where a dude kind of, and I think about this a lot because I think about our show and what's our niche. Like, we're two dads. You know, I'm 39. Gosh, it sounds terrible to say. I'm one away from 40. I'm old. But like, these indie things are the things that I want to recommend. But you go to your local shop and it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
And like the Scout stuff, like there's probably like one shop around me that carries Scout in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like, and again, like, it just happens to be one of those things that like my shop just does pull things from Scout, you know, and like I just happen to get lucky with that. It's, and again, like what you're saying there is like it is more of a commitment than to kind of dive back into like, well, now I'm going to go on their website, I'm going to look at the trade paperback, and like so you can definitely see where you're going. But to get out of this rabbit hole,
please.
Something that we decided that we were going to talk about are, like, you know, if you haven't figured it out so far, we both have comic book podcasts, and we mostly focus on things that are current and kind of coming out, like issue number ones, and like on like things that are currently coming out. So we never get a chance to like go back and talk about comics that like we've read either prior to the podcast or maybe like adjacent to the podcast or even during our podcast, and just, you know, they didn't come up as like front and center things. One for me, just I'll be selfish and just kick this right off, because you mentioned Deadpool earlier. I was really big into Deadpool when I first started reading comics as well, because it's just a fun, wacky time.
Yeah.
Deadpool's great.
And specifically, I was into the 2014 run. I don't know if obviously the Brian Posehn, which makes sense because I really
Yes.
enjoy Brian Posehn.
With the dead presidents.
Yes, that's where that arc starts. But ironically, and it's not ironic at all, but funnily enough, it's the volume number 3 of that run that I really love, and it's up on my wall, and it's something that I really enjoy going back to. And I'm trying to find. Oh, it's called The Good. Let me see. The Good, the Bad, and I think, yeah, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's Captain America, Wolverine, and Deadpool. They're teaming up. They find out that there's clones, like evil.
Yeah.
They use Deadpool's DNA to make clones of the X-Men in North Korea. And so Deadpool, Wolverine, and Captain America have to go on this adventure to North Korea. And it's like real. I mean, it's a Deadpool story, so it's like real sad, but it's also really funny. One thing I remember is that Wolverine doesn't have his healing factor during this time, and he gets cut, and Deadpool puts like a Hello Kitty stick band-aid on him or something like that. Yeah, that's just it. That whole like arc and how it's written is that whole run is fantastic, because what they do at the end of each arc is that they'll tell like a lost tale of Deadpool, and it'll like go back in time, like before he was even like announced. Like they'll just go back to the set, or before he was even a character, they'll just go back to like the 70s and like tell a story from there, and then it ties into like the next volume. And so it's just like a really fun Deadpool. Like if you're out there and you're listening and you're into Deadpool, get on that 2014 run, because it's just, yeah, it starts with the Dead President's run, which is really silly. And then I forget what the second volume is about, but yeah, that third volume is one of my personal favorites.
So that was one of the ones that it was like one of the very first omnibus I ever bought was of that run, and I
Oh,
read
really?
it all the way through. And it's a fantastic jumping on point for Deadpool. It's such a they did such a great job, and it's so funny beginning to end.
Yeah.
The Joe Kelly run's personally my favorite, but
okay,
another good one.
I love The Merc with a Mouth. Have you ever read that like that whole series?
Mm-mm.
Oh, really? I would very much recommend. This is like Deadpool before he kind of got like mainstream media whitewashed. For like, he's very crass, it's very inappropriate. But it's like a very good story. He gets sent to the Savage Land to how do you say this? Find a like there's like this weapon of, you know, untold proportion that they're like, you're the only one that can go in and get this. And he goes in and he discovers that it's his own severed head from a parallel dimension. And so the arc is him trying to escape the Savage Land and run away from like all these like AIM agents and stuff while he has his own severed head. And it's a lot of fun. But I feel like I've been talking forever. Kyle, what's something that you think sits special in your heart?
Well, it's kind of funny because I think, Mad, you just started reading them too, but the thing that pops into my head right away is the TMNT IDW collection.
Oh, yeah.
When I first started collecting those, and just kind of how it reframed the story for me. Like, I know the beginning, like how it tells the origin story of the Turtles of Splinter was so wild to me at first. I was like, what? This is crazy. Like this whole, like these spirits who have come back from, you know, a long time ago. I don't know how else you would say that, but
Yeah.
I just thought they did such a good job, and I've read them all. I've kept up with them, and it's just such a fun world. And I've never actually read the original Turtle Run by Eastman and Eastman and Laird, and
Yeah.
I'd love to. But that IDW collection is just a fantastic romp, fun.
It really is. I like that you used the word reframing. Like, and it really did do it in just like a fresh way that just made sense. Like, you didn't need to question Oh, so they're just the reincarnated spirits
Yeah.
of of Splinter and the Turtles before, like, back in the days of Japan, or and that whole first volume, I'm still working my way through the second one because it's my like, oh, I've read everything I bought last week. I guess I can jump back into the Turtles.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no, I blew through volume 1 and like absolutely loved it. I I can't say I can remember in great detail, but when I was a child, my babysitter, he had like the Ninja Turtles like original run, and he
Oh,
let me. And
really?
yeah, and he like, so I was probably like 3, 4, 5 years old,
And you
and
can't remember it? What the heck?
yeah, I know. But I remember like looking through it because like the movies was, had recently come out. And
Hmm.
so it was like the cartoon show had been on for a while. And like I was like into it. And I just remember him being like, this is like where that all came from, and like showing me the comics. And I was like, this is really cool. But it's also, if I remember correctly, it's all in black and white.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I actually own they colorized them in a collected called The Works, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
have the 6 volumes of that. I've just never had the time to actually crack it open, but I'd love to.
Isn't
Yeah.
that the fun thing when you have like the about being a comic book collector is that like I mean it's the same thing as like book collectors, right? Because I also do this with like a bunch of books. Is you just buy them and it's just nice to own them. So like
Mm-hmm.
if you're a new comic book collector out there and you're
Yeah.
starting to like do these things where you buy trade paperbacks, I'll just say that and you don't read them, it's completely normal. We
So
all
Yeah.
do it.
normal.
Like, but
Well,
it's
it's a
so
little
nice
bit
to
of
have
like,
it.
yeah, there's a little bit of like FOMO, or like, this is never going to be reprinted. I got to buy it now. I got to find it in case I never have an opportunity to get it again. And that's how it
Yeah.
was with the Works, because they're not printing those again as of right now. Like, someone's going to be listening to this in a year and they're like, dude, they've reprinted all of these. What's this
Yeah.
guy talking about?
Yeah, that's something I never really realized about comics until like because that's something I guess you kind of don't realize until you're older and like you just kind of think things are like infinite, you know, like there's just
Mhm.
always going to be copies of these things. But like
Mhm.
one of my uh this is also a run that I love to go back to is the what is it? The Superior Foes of Spider-Man. That was
Oh yeah.
a Nick Spencer joint. Um, yeah, and I love going back to that, but I had to buy each individual issue because they didn't. They either did have a trade paperback and it's like stupid expensive, or they just didn't make one. I can't remember, but I ended up having to just buy all the issues because I'm like I want to have this arc and this run
Mhm.
because I think it's so great, but like it's just not memorialized, you know? There's a Punisher story that has the same thing. Like there was this Punisher story that I read probably around 2014 as well. Like fantastic art, fantastic story. Looking for trade paperbacks and they're like 30 $40 and I'm just like, "Oh, and
Yeah.
don't know if I want to do that."
When I first got into the hobby, I spent way too much money on these
Mm.
omnibuses. Like, they're not even
Yeah.
very convenient to read. Like,
They're
They're
very
not.
thick.
now I don't buy them. I'll collect it in trade, or if there's an oversized hardcover. But man, those omnibuses are just a ridiculous format. But when I'm first getting into it, I'm like, oh, it's the whole run. I don't need to worry about collecting anything else. Everything I need to read's right here in one, and that's nice. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
yikes.
I don't know if I've ever actually finished reading through an omnibus, because
Well,
it like, I don't know, there's a lot that goes into it, but like you said, it's just like they're not the best thing to like hold and read.
No,
And
and as you know, I like to be laying down, and I
yeah.
lay down to read. And you
Yeah.
can't really like hold an omnibus up
it's
like
like
in
reading a phone
bed.
book.
Yeah, then it
Like, your
like
wrist is
slips out of
gonna
your
break.
hand. Yeah, it slips out of your hand and like hits you in the nose.
Yeah,
And it
dude.
didn't draw any blood, but it still hurt. Like,
Yeah, and it's embarrassing. It's the shame that hurts more than anything. But
yeah,
Matt, you haven't.
when your lady's laughing at you because she
Yeah,
witnessed.
Yeah,
just
I
drop a book
told
on
you
your
your
face.
hobby was dumb. Whatever.
I
uh,
know.
Matt, you haven't chimed in on this. What's something that sits special in your heart?
Something that sits special in my heart.
Besides Monk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my comic.
I know. I've honestly been like thinking about it since you first mentioned this is something we're going to be talking
I'm
about,
sitting here like trying to scroll through all my things, like, huh?
Oh,
and
what
it's
app
just
do you use? Do you use
CLZ.
Yeah, that's I started using that recently. It's fantastic.
It's great.
well, I guess I might have to hop on that CLZ. Um, I don't know. This might be kind of dumb, but actually, I don't think it will be. Because you guys have actually talked about it on your podcast. Because I think you guys kind of
That doesn't
maybe
mean it's not dumb. Let's just.
I yeah, but I can't remember if you both did it or if you or Ray did it just on your own. But the Batman New 52 run, like the first
Yeah.
I don't know, probably the first like 20 issues are just
The
so
Court of
solid.
Owls.
Yeah, the Court of Owls
Oh
run.
my gosh.
Like I loved that, just the whole introduction of the Court of Owls. Like what's the Talon is kind of like they're
So
like
good.
yeah, it's drawn super well. I can't recall who drew it. Scott Snyder wrote it.
Yeah.
Um but yeah,
Capullo.
and it's just like if you like for me it's just like it is something of Scott Snyder's, if you're a fan of his, like that you probably should have read at this point.
Yes. 100% agreed, dude. That was one of my favorite stories I think I've ever read now, and it cemented Batman as like one of my favorites. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know, it's absolutely phenomenal. There's not anything wrong with that. Like, it's a perfect story to me.
So you
Yeah.
guys remember how we were just talking about trade paperbacks that you own that you've never read?
That's
Is
what
this
you got, one of those?
Yeah. I even had
Yeah.
it up on my wall and I took it down because I'm like, this seems like disingenuous. Like I'm just
Yeah.
it seems like and I just have it up there like to showboat. I'm like, I have the Court of Owls trade paperback like everyone else who's ever read a Batman comic. But I mean, I definitely want to read it because it seems like it's just like I feel like it needs to be Halloween. I need to be like in the mood for it. Because
Mhm.
it's just has so much hype built around it for me now that I want to like make sure that it kind of lives up to it.
It will.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will.
It will. It'll get you there, man. But yeah, no, like because that was such a weird time in collecting too, because there was so much buzz about DC restarting and doing this new 52, but like so much of it just did not land, and so like it's the new 52 and collect like in the history of DC is like the shortest like volume run for all of their series,
Mhm.
but not all of them were bad. Because yeah, like I was also getting the Detective Comics as well as the Dark Knight, um, and those were all super solid as well.
I read the first Aquaman arc of the new 52 just
Yeah,
randomly at one point in time, and I really enjoyed that. I
I
think
was
that was a
told.
lot of fun.
So speaking of walking into comic shops, when I first moved back to the States from Taiwan, I went to the comic shop as close to my house as I there was, but it again was just it was more of a game shop than a comic shop.
Hmm.
And the guy told me, because I was just like, I'm just getting back into it. I don't know what to get into. He's like, oh, they just started the new 52, and supposedly the one you want to get is Aquaman.
Nice.
And so I have also read the first Aquaman, but I'm also not like a huge Aquaman fan, so I didn't go past like issue 5 or 6, whatever the first arc was. Um, but like another one that's really good from that
Oh,
run.
just sorry, just Jeff Johns wrote that. And
Oh,
Ivan Iris, I guess that was a combined thing. Okay, so I didn't know that. So that would explain why Jeff Johns is really good. I also read the Justice League New 52. Did you guys read that as well?
I did not.
Oh, really? I thought it was a phenomenal intro to the characters. There's a DC animated movie that's essentially the exact same arc or same story, and that's also a lot of fun. The only thing that I don't enjoy about it is at the end they pick up like a little kid picks up a Justice League comic book. And I'm like,
Hmm.
"All right, Jeff Johns, we get it. You read Justice League comics when you were a kid. Like you didn't need to do that." But that was just my own everything besides that. I think I'd like introduction to like the Justice League. Like I think reading that made me understand why Jeff Johns was like had the name that he did, because I think
Hmm.
he did such a fantastic job introducing them and like bringing them all together. Yeah, I thought it was very good.
Yeah. Did you read anything? Just since we're on the New 52, Kyle, did you read anything else out of the New 52?
I own so much, but I have not read it.
Yeah,
I also think
because
I read the Suicide Squad from the New 52 as well, the first volume or two. I
yeah,
definitely own it for sure.
I
yeah.
Isn't
really
it
hope my
it's
wife doesn't listen to this episode. She's gonna get real mad.
just
What do you
own it?
mean
Yep,
you
no.
haven't read it?
It's collecting. It's a
It's
collector's item.
Yeah.
But the Suicide Squad was pretty good. It was definitely like dark. And again, I think it's the Suicide. I haven't read the newest one. I did pick it up recently on Free Comic Book Day, a bunch of it. But I would imagine that it's probably suffered the same thing as Deadpool of just like now that you're mainstream, we're gonna make you like crass, but it's not. It's gonna be like family friendly crass instead of what you were before. You know.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's just kind of, I mean, that's why indie comics exist because they can just kind of be raw and just allow themselves to be whatever it is without kind of having to appeal to that,
Yeah.
mom pop shop kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, can I talk about another one, or were you going to say something,
I'll go for it, man.
Who's you? Who me? Or
Mr.
Matt?
Mad, the chuckler?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, no, go for it. Talk about another one.
So the other one, I'm going to see if I can get this right. The other one that I want to talk about is right there. If you're watching the video, it's the Hulk, the End. Have you guys heard of this or read this?
Mm-mm.
So this is a comic that I first read digitally when I was overseas. And the premise is that I forget how it happened, but the world has experienced some sort of nuclear fallout. That was like the product of like some villain like came up and was like, I'm gonna like have all the nukes go off at the same time, something like that. I forget. It's not really important to the story. What's important to the story is that the only one left is Bruce Banner and like some sort of like video device that's recording him. And I forget what the premise is to why that's there, but it essentially just exists to have somebody that he can talk to, besides the Hulk. But it's this weird battle between like Bruce Banner and the Hulk of just like, hey, there's nothing left. Like we've been just walking this like doomed, desolate planet for thousands of years now, and you know what are you trying to accomplish here, Hulk? And so it's kind of like a dive into like the psychology of like the Hulk and why he wants that like self-preservation and stuff. And he also fights giant radioactive cockroaches at one point. I'm pretty sure they eat him and he regenerates. And it's like just this like thing that like just keeps happening to him, and he just has to keep outrunning these locusts because he can't fight them all off. They just devour him and then he regenerates. But yeah, it's a very like heartfelt, sad, like Kyle, I feel like you really like post-apocalyptic stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
I have like, I just want to experience it sort of vibes.
Yeah.
Like I just want to go into an abandoned building and be able to walk around and be like, what was in this guy's drawer? What is this guy up to?
I mean, you can do that. You'll just probably get arrested
I'll
or
get
fined
arrested.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're fascinating stories. I do like them.
Sorry, as you were talking about the end, it's on Comixology, so I'm flipping through it, and I really like the panels.
Yeah.
They're like very, very classic.
I would almost even be like wager that it was written by David Cross. No, is that the comedian? There's a very classic no, it's not them. So, oh no, who's it by? Oh yeah, Peter David. So Peter David is like a pretty classic Hulk writer from like the back in the olden days. I don't know which era, but he also did that Mephisto run or Miestro. Is that the right word? Yeah, not Miestro. Oh my goodness, the Miestro run, and that I really enjoyed. But yeah,
I think it's Maestro
Maestro.
because it's MAE.
Yeah, it's whatever
right?
the conductor
Yeah.
thing is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a one shot. It's a great little story. I bought it in trade paperback because I'm just like, I gotta have this story. It's
Hulk the End.
Yep. Or just the End Hulk, I think is what
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, Hulk the End. Definitely look
Yeah.
into it.
I jotted it down.
You jobbered it hut down.
Job it down.
Job in video.
How about you, Kyle? What's some?
You
What's
want,
some?
can I do like two? Is that okay? Because one's kind of
Yeah,
a cheat.
Absolutely.
I don't want to
Sure.
make us go over time or anything, but
No, we're good on
Oh,
time.
you're good.
in a fascinating sort of way, when I was a kid, another thing that really like impacted me, it wasn't necessarily the comic books, but Spawn, the animated TV show, like opened my
Oh, yeah.
mind to this whole world in such a way that it still impacts me today. Like I remember the first time it was on TV, just being like sucked into like this whole other thing that I didn't know about, and just the vibe and the tone, and like this anti-hero, and I don't know, it just was wild, 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 and so that made a
Ble-
huge impact on me in terms of comics and my love of Todd and
I believe that, yeah, it is, because I rewatched the first episode. It's on HBO Max.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I didn't even know
Todd
this
sitting there
existed.
talking to you at the beginning of each episode. It's so
yeah,
wild.
Oh, really?
yeah. Mhm.
Oh, that's cool. I remember this Super Friends show when I was really young. Do you know guys know the Super Friends show?
Yeah, the old, like the
Yeah.
old one.
Oh yeah, the old
Yeah.
one. Because
Yeah.
my dad and I don't know if I ever mentioned this game on this show, but my dad and I would play this game that was essentially like just a matching game. Like you would have to like get tiles and like match characters, and they were all DC characters, but they were kind of all based off of the Super Friends. And so that was like my really first exposure to like not just like Batman and Superman, but like it had the Riddler on there, like the Penguin,
Mhm.
Black Manta, even, so like all these, not, what would be like kind of like A list or B list DC people. But when you're a kid, like if you're not watching like the animated series or whatever, you don't really know about like the villains and the plethora of like history behind all of that. Like Solomon
Mhm.
Grundy was on there as well, and again, those are all
Mhm.
people that are in the Super Friends show, but like not really accessible if you're not watching these things. So that definitely, like, I can remember that thing as clear as day. I wonder if my parents still have it. I'll have to ask.
Yeah. But Kyle, you were going into Spawn.
Oh yeah, so that just made a huge impact to this day. I don't know what it was. It was just something about it just seemed so different, and I just remember being just in awe of it. And I just binged it. I think I was staying the night at my buddy's house. Dude fell asleep, and he had HBO, and it was on, and I literally stayed up all night just alone watching Spawn animated. Dude, like I just
awesome.
couldn't stop. But then in terms of comic books that are special to me to this day, I would say Invincible, Robert Kirkman.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's just a superhero story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you know how I feel about that. And
Mhm.
it does it all,
Yeah.
and it does it really well. And I think that it's probably my favorite superhero story.
Did you
ever
watch
written.
the animated
loved it.
series for it? Yeah.
Super fantastic, dude.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for the second season. I loved it. I thought they did a phenomenal job. Such a great story. And I actually have reread that whole entire series twice just because I love it so much. So,
Well, I'm gonna read it one more time just so I can be like you.
it's not really, wasn't really meant to be a brag. I know it's probably sounded like it, but it's just I love it, and I just love all the characters. And
that's another one that I never read. I can't say that I own any of it. I did download it on Comixology, but I never like cracked it open. I watched
Yeah.
like some clips of the show. I
That's
will
pretty
say
good.
I do think that the best translation of comics, obviously besides like comics, is just animated stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think live action, especially with movies, I feel like you can fit so much more in an animated series than you can in like 3 movies.
Yeah.
Like Batman will only ever have like 5 villains, and it'll only have like 3 big crusades, or
Mhm.
maybe he does, but like you're never going to get to see it, so you'll just hear about it, or it'll come out in a comic book, which is cool, but it isn't the same thing as the movies or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
So I also had a huge crush on Eve, so don't tell my wife.
I get it, man. I get it.
Big fan. Big fan.
Oh.
But
Yeah,
now we're
no,
back to you,
that's
Mr. Mad.
But yeah, that's I read Invincible. It was all on Comixology. I don't know if it still is, but you can get through it on there for sure.
I think some of it
Imagine.
is because I think Ray was reading it on there. Yeah.
Yeah. I got one more from the New 52 that like nobody talks about, and this is a DC character I've always really liked, but he just doesn't hold a torch to any of the other characters. But Jonah Hex,
Oh,
I've
okay.
wanted to
I've
read that. I've heard great things about it.
I've
I
always been very curious about this character.
yeah, I mean he's just, I mean if you want an intro, like it's not the best quality movie, but the one where Josh Brolin plays Jonah Hex,
Hmm.
like it's not a bad movie in getting like an understanding of that world. But he's just this cowboy with a mangled face, and he's like the Clint Eastwood of his world. And it's just a really good like western. But then it's sometimes, and in this run too, like Booster Gold shows up. Booster Gold's a great character, another one that I think is like an
Have you
unsung like DC hero.
have you been
But
reading Human Target at all? The Human
No.
Target? Oh, okay.
no.
It's really good. I think you would both enjoy it. But anyway, go ahead.
I've
Yeah.
heard really good things about this podcast I listen to. They go on about it a lot. But besides them, I've heard good things about it. So definitely,
But
I want to get into Animal Man. I think that's my next DC person that I'm gonna try to get into.
yeah, that was recommended to us by Eric, right?
Eric, right?
From Outer Space Comics.
Yep.
And that's a Lemire run.
Yeah, but somebody wrote Animal Man before him. I can't remember who.
Was it?
Jeff Johns? No.
Yeah, no. I
Jeff
think
Johns?
something is it something Ross.
You guys try to figure it out. I'm gonna go to the Grant
Yeah.
Morrison.
Grant Morrison. Yeah,
Yeah, because I had it in my Google search. I started typing
yeah.
in.
I was
Animal Man.
close. Morrison. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was getting there.
You were there. Yeah, I'll give you credit. You got some points.
So do you have more you want to say about Jonah Hex?
Just I don't know. Like if you want like kind of an anti-hero like superhero story that's set in just like a western atmosphere but is still somehow connected to like the DC universe, because like characters do make appearances, like Superman even like comes back in time at some point, and like they're just like really cool cameos, and just the trouble that Jonah Hex gets into and always finds his way out of, it just never gets old to me. It's always just like there's a shootout going on. Like, but
I definitely I've always been interested in that. So the way you're selling it sounds pretty dang good to me, that I could swing into it and it'll be a lot of fun. But the reason I'm glad you brought up that, because there's a Western kind of story that I wanted to bring up, and it's a perfect segue, and I'm celebrating in it right now. But there was this comic that and I've talked about it before in the show, but never really in great length. But there's this comic that I picked up called Join the Future, and it is a comic about it's not so much post-apocalypse, but it's more of like post-normal society as we know it. Kind of all societies live inside of these mega cities, and they're just like metropolises that are just like, just gargantuan, and they essentially like just buy up all the farmlands around them and then just allocate all the resources back into the city, so that there's not really any inhabitable land besides just in the city. So the comic is from the perspective of like one of the last remaining towns, and it is very much just like a Western. They're kind of just living off on their own thing. Like they're not like modern people. They've regressed like into just being like, very nomadic and living on their own. And then so the story is just a fight between them and the city of like, you're not going to take our land from us. And it's just a great fun concept of like just good versus evil.
sorry, what was it called again?
Join the Future. I can't even remember if I said it. But it's by it's by the same guy who wrote now I can't remember. Mind Magnet.
Matt Kent?
No.
Zach Kaplan.
Yep, that's it. Zach Kaplan. Yep. and I can't remember the comic that Mind Met. It's something Mind. It's about an app that rearranges your mind. But yeah, Join the Future was a lot of fun. If you're into westerns, and again, it's not really post-apocalyptic, more like post-society. That's definitely one I would check out. But
Can I ask you? Can we do a guilty pleasure roundabout here?
Sure.
I'll start because
All
I have
right.
one that I love that's a little bit embarrassing.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
I literally love Gwenpool.
Oh,
really?
nice.
There you go.
I love it so much, especially the unbelievable. The unbelievable is the first arc of that, the first 4
Run.
volumes, first run. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just phenomenal, wild storytelling, jumping through panels and traveling from her world into the comic world, and I love it so much. I had to buy the omnibus of that as well, even though I own all the trades already and all the singles, and I have a bunch of Gwenpool bobbleheads and Funkos.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I'm really glad I know that about you now.
I'm gonna have to be looking out for Gwenpool's stuff for you. I've heard really good things about that because I feel like it's like all the fun stuff of like just what makes, that's a good question for you. What makes Gwenpool Gwenpool? What separates her from Deadpool? Does she have like more of a Spider-Man-esque like personality, or what is?
Definitely, like it's a total blend of the personality of Deadpool and Spider-Man, but just being with that teenage angst of a girl, but doubled with the fact that she knows she's in a comic book. And then she can literally, like, towards the end, realizes she can get really close to the end of the panel and like pull herself out of the panel. It's just so freaking fun, dude. Like from beginning to end, and just the writing and the art in the first half, just the way she's characterized was so much fun. I don't really know how else to describe it. I keep repeating myself. I'm sure I sound really intelligent, but it's one of my most fun reads. I love going back to it. It's super cool. And
well, you're making me want to cash in on my free month of Marvel Unlimited.
if you do, let me know what you think. Don't feel obligated to like it just because it's my guilty pleasure, but it's a wild, fun ride, and I think she's a cool character.
I'll check it out. I have a guilty pleasure, I guess, in that kind of same vein, but I don't always I don't collect all of it. I have a few issues, but I really like Silk.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a couple of those too.
Because I have my most valuable comic I own is her first appearance, and that was from the 2014, like when Marvel kind of did their own like New 52 thing around the same time. Like I have probably the first. I think I actually have the complete run because I think
Marvel Now. Marvel Now is that time that you're thinking of.
Yeah. But yeah, I think her first appearance is like in issue 4, and that's when she becomes, gets her powers and everything. And I don't know. I think just because of that, like I more of like followed Silk in like from like an outside perspective rather than like eating up everything that gets put out by her. Cause I'm honestly just overwhelmed by Marvel. Just
aren't we all? Besides Ross.
I just don't know. Like, I want to read it all, but I don't want to read it at all.
Yeah, that's pretty much, that sums it up very much. I think if I was to have a guilty pleasure, and like I don't feel too ashamed about this, but I really love a good old Sonic comic. Like just going into that world, because like it's just so like it's very like charming and just very like warm and like, hey, we're all just like kind of knuckleheads, but they're like very serious about like whatever is happening. But then it's just like, oh, it's okay, it's resolved. Like you don't have to like. And it's funny because Kyle, we talk a lot about like just reading like heavy dark comics, and like we kind of just for some reason just tend to gravitate towards that, even though like we're like, enough, we get it. But like they keep putting out good ones.
You got darker than the last thing.
You did it great. It's just black on black art. But no, being able to have like a little palette cleanser of just like a fun little like oh, this is just a cute little story about a little knucklehead running around with other knuckleheads.
Mhm.
Our buddy Ross is a big fan of the Sonic as well.
Yeah.
I
Ross
think
and
I've
I
mentioned.
have-
I bet you Ross has these if he's a
Oh.
Sonic fan. But apparently, if you own the Archie comics, like original run of Sonic, like I like so many of those are worth like $300 a pop.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Ross,
it,
sign off in the
like,
comments. Let us know.
I'm
We're gonna
not
raid your
sure.
house.
I'm not sure if that's graded condition or raw condition, but either way, it speaks one way or the other that there's some good value to those.
Or Ross condition.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ross condition.
Wow. On that note,
I'm curious now. I want to know if Ross has them. So when Ross listens to this, that's my question for him. Do you have the Archie run of Sonic?
That's our call to action for the week for all of our listeners. Does Ross have this comic?
Everybody find out.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's hey, Kyle, do you want to bring the horse into town? What's the horse up to this week?
I think he's running away from you as fast as he possibly can. There's that guy who's always kicking me.
I try to be so nice to the horse, but then everyone's all like, Monk loves kicking this horse. And I'm like, I might have made a passing reference to that one time, but apparently that sticks out. That would be terrible.
I don't know what it is. Sometimes, like I said, I listen to your show on the way home from work, so I'm already a little bit slap happy. But sometimes you'll come in with these like one-liners, and they just crack me up. And like, I'm on the phone with Ray the next day, and I'm like, "Did you hear Monk say, 'Let's ride this horse into town' or something?" And I was like, I was dying.
Well, I do what I can. It's my service back to the universe.
And then there was one time you said something. You were like, it was mid-sentence, and you said something like, "The Lord know," or no, you said, "Only my comic book guy and the Lord know." And I was laughing for like 15 minutes. It just caught me. I don't know. It's like these timings of on the way home. It's just something funny about my comic book guy and the Lord.
He's like he's like in the confessional.
I love it.
He is your priest.
I just show up every week. I'm like, all right, what do I need?
Yep.
Tell me what I should get. Oh my goodness, fool. Hey man, we appreciate you coming on so much.
Thanks for having me.
You know, if you're listening or watching this and you haven't checked out the Comic Book Lair, I almost said the Pull Box Lair again. Make sure that you do that. Maybe, yeah. In a dream world, when we all have infinite time, we could start like a monthly podcast called the Pull Box Lair. But yeah, there's just
it's more about timing. I'd love to do it now, but you'd be up till 12:30 every month.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not a problem because I'm a hood rat and I stay up late doing stupid shit, stupid stuff anyways. Like was cursing on podcasts that I'm not supposed to curse on. But anyways, what are you gonna do? You live and you learn. But isn't that what comics teach us? I'm sure they teach us a lot of things.
Well, and since this is recorded, you can go beep that out.
That's true. I can put a big, like, I'm going to make a sound. Awooga. I'm going to see if I can put that over. Probably only be able to do that in the audio version.
Well, I know it's been mentioned several times already, but Kyle, where can people find you?
You know, it's so funny. I don't do this on my show ever. So at the Comic Book Lair on Instagram, that's a good start. And there's a link tree there, which will take you everywhere else. So,
and also, don't sell your website short because you have a dope website that'll definitely be linked in the description. I love just going out there. You can leave a message, like a little voice message. I guess I should do that now that I've promoted it. Maybe after this, in my tired, delusional state, I'll just go over there and leave some sort of cryptic message. Maybe I'll put it in backwards.
Make sure you change your voice.
Yeah,
so they don't know it's you.
That's right. Well, hey, we appreciate you coming on. We really love the conversations that you and Ray have. We really love the conversations that you guys have together with us, and just being out there and doing the dang thing. So it's pretty great.
It's pretty cool that we've all become fast friends here. So we love you guys. We love your show, and
we love you too.
Just love all around.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
I guess, and to close this thing out, I guess I should say I haven't felt love like these in years.
Yes.